Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today I am joined by my friend and colleague Alex Amorosi to break down your horoscopes for the month of March. We will be going through all 12 signs with a focus on some of the major transits happening in the whole sign house of Pisces, as well as the eclipse coming up in Libra. At the beginning of this video, we will outline for you what we're looking at and why, and then we'll go into the horoscope breakdown for all 12 signs. You can find those chapter changes listed if you want to jump ahead. I recommend listening to the introduction part here so that you can understand the overview of the transits we've chosen and again, the why behind it before just jumping to the horoscope. That'll give you some necessary context. But anyway, that's our goal for today. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can fiddle. I heard lick. I heard caress. I heard punch. I heard smash. Oh, there was a really good one about smashing avocado. People have been working with the avocado metaphors, and I'm a big fan of all of that. So anyway, tappity tap the like button. We really we really appreciate it. We appreciate your subscription. If you're new, share your comments and reflections. We always like to hear what you guys are experiencing out there, and you can find a transcript of today's talk on the website nightlightastrology.com. I want to direct you over to the website. Couple of brief promos we're doing before we get started today. Go over to the website. You're going to notice a couple of new things. One is the shop. You'll see a shop tab. You click on that, and it will take you into our new archives, where you can find the link to all of our new live talks, which include Neptune and Uranus in love. Those are our March and April talks. And then you'll also find the recorded version of Pluto in Love, which we did in mid-February. You'll find my book. You can get early access to the chapters of my book as they're released about a year before it'll actually be in print. And then you can see all of our masterclass series from the previous year are all listed as well. So really cool stuff. We're glad to get this shop page up so that you can check out some of the great series that we've had in the past or register for some of the upcoming live talks that I have going on. And then I want to also share with you that my wife, Ashley, you guys know Ashley and her herbal work. She is back in 2024 from maternity leave, which she took for 2 years as we had not both kids in school. And so now that our kids are both in school, she is back to work. Really exciting. This is, if you guys don't know, Ashley has a master's degree in clinical herbal medicine and has been teaching and working with herbs and the spiritual energetics of herbs, as well as the kind of chemical and chemistry and science of herbs for a long time. She's led many, many people through her programs. I highly recommend that you check out her website, which is skyhouseherbs.com. Her new herbal apprenticeship program, which is not new, she's taught it for many years prior to her maternity leave, starts again on April 24th. Enrollment is open now, and you can there's an early bird rate and there's some good discounts. There's payment plans. We also have need-based tuition available for that. And if you stick around at the end of today's program, after Alex and I have finished up horoscopes, you will see an interview that I made with Ashley talking about the program so you can learn more about it and what it includes. So after today, you'll hear me say, stick around if you want to hear more about that. I interview Ashley at the end of today's content. So on that note, I welcome Alex back to the show for some horoscopes. Hey, Alex.
Lord Elenbaas. It's always good to be back.
It is. We are back.
We're back.
I'm super excited because we're getting into eclipse season. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that is when I remember that I'm living in a magical universe that I fell asleep on temporarily. It's like, well, there's been some big transits, don't get me wrong, already this year that have kept me from falling asleep at the wheel. But like every time eclipses come back around, I'm like, oh yeah, shit. I'm in a spiritual 5D reality. Everything's very real again.
Yeah. I mean, especially with that Aries eclipse, it's like there's no better wake up, McFly moment from Back to the Future, the knock on the forehead than an Aries eclipse. I remember that 29 Aries one last year. I was like, okay, I'm back. Yeah. I've got my coffee and we're doing this thing again.
Yes. Yeah. For me last year, it was the lunar eclipse in Scorpio, which was, I think, in May, or it was like late April or early May.
Yeah, late April.
That
late
one,
April, yes.
Yeah, that was huge. That was a big one. One thing could you turn up your microphone volume a little bit if possible?
It's all the way up. Hang on, let me change What is that better?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
At least on my end in my headphones or whatever. I just want to make sure it's okay. Good. We've got the chart up on the screen. Can you see it?
I can.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out some of the transits that are coming through this month that explain for everybody who is listening why we're focusing on the whole sign house of Pisces. And we'll also be looking, the Aries eclipse is in April. We're going to be looking at the Libra eclipse, which comes on March 25th. But first of all, oops, here we go. On March 8th, Mercury is going to conjoin Neptune. So first transit of the month, you can see there, Mercury in Pisces, conjoining Neptune in Pisces. That's a big transit from a Mercury who's gone through a very powerful transition in a sign that is not so easy for Mercury. So Mercury shortly after enters Aries, but culminating in Pisces. That's an important transit. Of course, just 2 days later, we then get a new moon in Pisces. And that new moon in Pisces, let me just see if I can get the hours a little bit better here. Yeah, here we go. So that new moon in Pisces is happening with both Saturn and Neptune also co-present. So a strong emphasis on Pisces happening again. Then on the 11th, we have Venus entering Pisces, where she will be in her exaltation. So then we get another strong confluence, again, focusing on the whole sign house of Pisces. On the 17th, the sun will then conjoin Neptune, again, in Pisces. On March 21st, then we'll have Venus in Pisces conjoining Saturn. So we get that 21st into the 22nd. On March 22nd, Mars enters Pisces. Right. So you can see that, like, of the transits of the month that I went through in my overview, I'd say 90% of them or 80% are Pisces action. So we want to look at that whole sign house of Pisces and just broadly talk about what kinds of topics are going to be really important for you based on your whole sign this month. The second thing we're doing is we're looking at the lunar eclipse, which is in Libra on the 25th. So on the 25th, here we can see that the full moon opposite the sun always is in Libra. And we see it within the 10-degree range of the south node. That's how we know it's an eclipse. So we have a lunar eclipse in the whole sign house of Libra. That house got some action last autumn, where the eclipses in Libra and Aries started coming through. So this is going to be a revisitation of Libra themes from the fall, or depending on which hemisphere you're in, the zodiacal fall of 2023. So really important to be looking at these two areas. One thing that they do share in common is that they are both signs of Venus. So we have Pisces as the exaltation of Venus and Libra as the domicile of Venus. It's also interesting to note that Libra's co-ruler is Saturn, who is exalted in Libra, and Venus is exalted in Pisces, co-present with Saturn during the eclipse. So there's definitely a kind of Venus-Saturn theme going on behind both of the whole sign houses that we're looking at, the Pisces signature and the Libra signature this month. They contain a kind of Venus-Saturn dynamic. So that might be something that you kind of hear coming through in the way we disseminate horoscopes. But I will leave it there. Alex, what are your initial thoughts or feelings about the emphasis on Pisces and Libra?
I think, first of all, the Venus is so strong, and really Venus does become very strong as she moves into Pisces. This is one of her most powerful placements. And I think that what's interesting about that is I think it bodes for a positive movement through this first eclipse. But I think that it does involve some amount of, where do I have to make some big grown-up decisions? And, Saturn usually comes along. It's like, it's not going to be a lot of fun, but it's a grown-up decision that is going to ultimately benefit you in the long run.
Right.
And I see that there was something I was reflecting on this too, as I was making lunch before we started recording. And I was like, Pisces, for some reason this month, just intuitively, Pisces feels like a return to innocence in a lot of ways. And I find that with Pisces, like, there's a sense of where you have, gone through the whole zodiac when you get to Pisces. And there's a returning back to one's original essence, but it takes with it all of the experience that we have had from going through the sort of archetypal obstacle course of the whole zodiac. So it's not just about like, I'm coming back to my sort of childish sense of innocence, but like a sense of innocence that is informed by a lot of experience, a new beginning that is informed by a lot of maybe some heavier stuff behind it.
Yeah.
I'd look at that.
Yeah. I think of this as a moment of reconciliation, as a potential theme because of the balancing of the scales and the kind of emotional, compassionate, forgiving themes of Pisces. I think of this also as a kind of romantic and melancholic exploration of values, standards, ideals, and what happens when they fail or don't work out exactly. I think about it as grief and dissolution in relationships. I think also about the need for emotional maturity and intelligence as we weigh and consider various factors socially, emotionally. And I see all of this looped into the upcoming Jupiter-Uranus dynamic that wants to create some kind of very powerful Venusian breakthrough, a new way of feeling good, a new way of feeling stable, a new way of feeling satisfied and easy, all the Taurian things. Like Jupiter-Uranus is trying to create this breakthrough. It's very Venusian. And it's like during this cycle, there's a preparing the ground for that breakthrough that might be challenging. It's like we might be having to grieve or let go of things in order to pave the way for what Jupiter and Uranus want to, create.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, and I've thought maybe it's just because I've studied Buddhism for a long time. We talk all the time about impermanence, but I think that we're very reluctant often in our modern culture to talk about grief and loss, and that those are not necessary. Those can be painful, but also grief, when it's in a healthy sense, sort of cleanses us. It washes through us. It allows old things that we have to let go of. If we can loosen the grip a little bit, there's always something coming on the other side of that. And I don't think we should skip over that to necessarily get to like the reward, so to speak. But I think that there's I was in a class on Saturday, and one of the women was mentioning that she does a meditation exercise where she asks two people to look at each other. They turn around. She asks them to change something about themselves. They turn around and they have to figure out what was changed. And she said almost invariably someone will take something away. They'll remove a pen behind their ear. They'll remove a lapel brooch or something like that. And she said it's so interesting how we always equate change just with loss. Yeah. And she's like, people don't add something often. They really will take something away. And I think that it's important to remember here that there might be some, as Adam was saying, some sadness in the letting go, but that can also be a cleansing sadness that prepares the ground for a really powerful end of the April season with Jupiter and Uranus. Yeah,
absolutely. And I also think like Pisces is a sign that has to wrestle with the world as it is in comparison or contrast to what it could be. And Libra occupies a more ideal sort of mental architectural space that is not always forced to wrestle with the tumultuous relationship between the ideal and the real, or between the messiness of the world and the hopes or wishes we have for it. And so I also wonder if this cycle isn't about bringing the sort of heavenly Venus and the earthly Venus together, the architect Venus and the grief in the counseling room Venus. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's so beautifully put. And there's like there's a sense with this where you can love the real as much as the ideal. And I think, it may further the theme we were talking about last month. And I definitely talked about on Instagram last month of the ideal versus the practical, the Aquarius, Taurus. I think it's a more emotional, in water signs, particularly, it's a little bit more with Pisces, emotional play on the same theme. Where it's like, you can love sometimes, when you're falling in love with a person or a place or whatever, it's like, yeah, I love living in this place. And there's some things about it that are a pain in the ass. I love this person. And there's some things about them that are a pain in the ass. And it's like, where do I find that happy medium of like, yes, there's an ideal, but what am I willing to sacrifice from that ideal in order to have the practical, tangible thing in my life?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we'll dive into Aries and start unpacking some of this sign by sign. I'm going to start us with Aries, and we'll alternate. And we've been going in the opposite order, so we'll flip again. And yeah, so let's start by looking at. Whoops, I drew a circle, and I need a line. All right.
It looks like you're drawing the solar system in the middle of the chart.
Right? So 12 and 7 as two major places for Aries this month. And to me, we can bring these together or not. The 12th is about those things that undermine us and becoming aware of them, whether they are things within ourself or in the environment or people. But also the 12th is the unconscious, whether that is unconscious material that is seeking to be included. Don't count me out. Include me. Or if it's something that is unconsciously undermining us that really needs to go, like alcoholism or something. So we look at that 12th house as a blind spot that is getting a lot of attention. That means there's greater chance for you to become aware of it. For better or worse, that's a great thing. It's a good thing for us to become more conscious of what is in a blind spot, because sometimes there's gold in the blind spot as much as there might be a shadow or a demon or anything. So, but there's the connection with that 12th house as well as the 7th, and the 7th is going to be your intimate relationships. So how can we tie together the theme of relationships and the unconscious for Aries this month? That would be low hanging fruit for sure. I think the other possibility here is that we're dealing with who and what takes our time, energy, or attention, and in both positive and negative ways. There's sacrifice involved in good things and good people that we love. And there's sometimes the need to set boundaries and be careful that we're not being taken advantage of. Those are also themes that come to my mind. For Aries, the question might also be about the balance between self and others, since the second eclipse will be in your home sign in first house. But these are things that are going to gestate and probably come out at first in emotionally kind of tangled ways with the 12th house Pisces emphasis. So I would anticipate that what may feel a little bit like restless undercurrents you can't quite pin down may clarify themselves, especially around the late part of March after the Libra eclipse in through April, when we start getting a lot of action in your first house.
Yeah, I love that. I think, with this Pisces, all of this emphasis on Pisces, especially with Neptune present in the 12th house, this is a really good month to, when you're having feelings and emotions, be able to step back from them and look at them. Be really attentive, rather than, because it could be easy to get swept along with the current here, especially with an exalted Venus. There might be a sense of, if I only get this thing, if I only do this thing one more time, somehow that's going to solve something that it never really solves. So the ability to take a nice big picture look at what's going on, to stand behind it and observe it, can also bring a lot of clarity, I think, this month. And, for an eclipse in the 7th house, having a Libra moon myself, I think that this is important, whether it's in relationship or your intimate relationships or your friendships or whatever, to recognize that the mental balance of Venus doesn't always equate to practical balance. That when we think like, oh, of course, if I just get the scales even, then it will feel fair on all sides and good on all sides. And sometimes I think with an eclipse in Libra, at least this has been my discovery, and it's a little different in my chart where the house is, there's a sense of learning, like sometimes you give a little bit more, sometimes you receive a little bit more. Sometimes you are sort of on duty more in a relationship, and sometimes somebody else is. And that I think one of the things I'm learning a lot about Libra lately is stepping back from feeling like I have to be the fulcrum of the scale and control what's being balanced, and trust that there's a system that if I'm in flow with it, which can be helpful from Pisces, it balances itself in ways I may not understand, but ultimately are beneficial for all parties involved.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. That's a really nice read. So some good thoughts for you Aries folks out there. You can listen to this for your sun or rising, by the way. Let's move on to Taurus. And Alex, what do you think about the Libra energy in the 5th and the Pisces energy in the 11th this month?
So that's the 6th, right? Libra in the 6th.
Did I say 6th?
The 5th. You said.
Oh, my bad. 6th and 11th. That's what I meant.
I'm just double checking when.
Sorry.
No, sorry. I saw the bounds and I'm like, wait, did I miss? Okay. I got it. So let's see. I mean, I would say with the Pisces energy in the 11th house, this is a time where, especially when Venus passes Saturn, towards the middle of the month, that you might actually find yourself drawing in or attracting in. I find Venus in Pisces kind of attracts in a lot of support, benefactors, different allied social networks, in your social networks. That's very 11th house. And I think, but that might come from a place of, it's almost like that syndrome of like when you start to really become successful, you start to make a lot of money, you start to, really do well, you wonder why people are friends with you, or you wonder why people are in your life. And there might be some like discerning of like, okay, these people genuinely appreciate the wonderful exalted gifts that I bring. And some people are there for other reasons. So it might be a time of discernment for that in Pisces. And again, that takes some stepping back with Neptune present, with, Venus will be in between Saturn and Mars for a good part of the month, stepping back and really assessing that from a more, distance perspective in the mind. And I think with a lunar eclipse in the 6th house, this would be the culmination of some work to reestablish some sense of harmony, is how I would read that one. It would be like the culmination of, I have slogged through, I have gotten my machete out and hacked my way through the jungle back to where I know I am. And there might be some sense of feeling like a sense of balance has been reestablished, or it could be the call to let go and allow balance to find itself for you, especially with the moon in proximity to the south node. This is a south node eclipse. There seems to be like a sense of letting go of the struggle to try to hold it all together and trust a journey that you're on, or trust that a journey is completed. That's another one too. And I think it's sometimes we can, especially in the healing world, you can just heal forever, man. You just keep healing. It's like, sometimes it's done, go make dinner, so there could be that sort of feeling with it as well.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, when I think about Jupiter and Uranus about to conjoin in the first whole sign house for Tauruses, and I think about that 6th house south node eclipse, I also think about what is happening that could lead directly to a shift in your health, your body. Sometimes, and I don't think it has to be like a rock bottom, but sometimes things of consequence happen. It's very 6th housey, and there's obstacles that have to be overcome, or sicknesses or accidents, or hopefully just minor things, but they come up. And when they're happening like that, an eclipse in the 6th, so close to Jupiter and Uranus, you get the feeling that the frustrations or challenges, maybe especially around health with a lunar eclipse in the 6th, are going to translate very swiftly to a kind of breakthrough around vitality and well-being for Tauruses. I also wonder about shifts or changes in allies, friends, or people in your life coming and going that also facilitate greater freedom or some kind of personal breakthrough.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. That's a good one. I'm thinking about that a lot, obviously, since I'm a Taurus rising. I'm like, ooh, that should be interesting.
It's always funny when you read for yourself.
I know.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's good to hand that one off from time to time. Yeah. So we go into Gemini. I'll take this one. We get a lot of emphasis on the 10th house, and then some emphasis on the 5th through the eclipse in Libra. Well, to me, when you connect the Libran eclipse in Venus's sign with Venus exalted in the 10th, doing a bunch of things this month, I think for Geminis about a kind of creative renaissance. The word renaissance, like rebirth, awakening. So I wonder for Geminis if there isn't a kind of, sometimes South Node eclipses, lunar eclipses, are going to show themselves as something expiring. And if something's expiring as exalted Venus reaches Saturn in your 10th house, ruling the eclipse, I've got to think that if there's something you've been doing professionally that it's not glittering anymore, it's not making you happy, it's not creatively rewarding, that you'll really be feeling it around these transits this month. On the other hand, if maybe you're reaching the completion of a creative project or a creative era in your life where something is solidifying and sort of making its way into a final form. I also wonder about the connection between love, romance, and the workplace. I know it's kind of like soap opera-ish, but it's like maybe you and Darren are finding a dark hallway. Right?
I never expected that to happen.
Exactly. So, yeah, I like the Piscean emphasis, though, when it comes to, what are you hoping or longing for in your career or your long-term professional outlook? What's making itself known to you right now? Like, whether it's disappointment or it's aspiration, you're going to have, excuse me, I got a dog hair in my mouth. It's fun. Love my dog. But you're going to be feelings. You're going to be wrestling with something emotionally in the career house. And it could be a creative wrestling that's very productive and exciting, but it could also be about frustrations that you need to pay attention to. Either way, I think the emphasis is on creative change in the career because of the connection between 5 and 11 with the eclipse in 5 and the exalted Venus moving through the 10th with a whole bunch of aspects with Neptune included. So I think creative tumultuousness or creative shifting and the end of some cycles around creativity, joy, pleasure, and their connection with career.
It was reflecting on as you were talking on about how I've always been since I was very little, very into Japanese art and culture in a lot of different ways. That's a big trip we're actually going to plan for next year, is to go to Japan for a few weeks.
Nice.
But yeah, I can't wait. That's like a lifelong bucket list thing for me. But I was thinking about a Libra moon, in the 5th house. And sometimes when I would take Japanese flower arranging years ago, the ikebana, you arrange and then you pause and you reflect on what you arranged. You take a minute to really create something aesthetic and beautiful, and it's very satisfying to also not just create, but then pause and look at, I created this harmonious structure. I created this, and it brings me a sense of peace and order to look at it in a certain way. And I think that there's something about that eclipse that is really bringing up that up for me, that idea of like maybe having created new things or wanting to create things that when you stand back and you sort of put your hands on your heart for a second, you really look at it, you say, this brings me a sense of harmony. It brings me a sense of order. It brings all these nice Libra ideas that can actually be quite soothing, especially when there's a lot of agitation in the mind. I think that can be very helpful because Pisces this month might feel in the career house a little emotionally, there's some chop in the surf, there's some chop in the water, and probably a very strong desire to move towards something that feels a little bit more creatively and artistically fulfilling in some way, but maybe feeling like at first that is challenged, or it may not feel like it's realistic or grown up with the aspect coming up to Saturn. And I think that's just a discernment to make. It may or it may not be, but I feel like those are the tensions that are going to start to pop around in this month. Yeah.
Right. There's a way of saying, is this real or mature or practical, or screw it, I don't care, I'm not going to let anything limit me. Right. I could see those voices kind of competing around career and creativity. Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to Cancer, and we've got loads of planets in the 9th with the stellium, or with the eclipse, excuse me, in the 4th for Cancers.
This is really interesting. I feel like all of this Pisces energy in the 9th house may have you feeling a little bit disillusioned about at first this month about how you make sense of the world. That may feel in some way that it gets thrown into question in some way. It may feel like there's a sense of, Adam's great word, melancholy, that comes up as one considers like an old belief system or an old way of ordering the world that just feels like it doesn't quite work anymore. It doesn't quite fit anymore. And there's a call towards something that brings a little bit more feeling of beauty, like instead of seeing the cosmos as like the universe, seeing it as the cosmos, right? Seeing something alive and beautiful and imbued with beauty and meaning, and especially this being in Jupiter's sign. And I think, I was thinking about this specifically for Cancer risings today with the eclipse in the 4th house. A lot of times when I'm working with clients, I work with them on the idea of eventually we have to bring the people that are our parents out of the sun and the moon. In other words, when we're little, and you probably see this with your girls, like your parents are gods in a certain way. They
Yeah.
everything flows through them, and we can really carry that into our adult lives. And I think eclipses in some way with the sun and the moon, and I think especially in the fourth house, there's something where we bring the family down out of something that may have felt like it had to be perfect or balanced or put together in some pristine way. And there's a sense where you realize, wow, my mom was a person, my dad was a person. It doesn't excuse anything that may have been difficult or challenging or traumatic in the past. But I think there's something with the eclipse where there's the light of the moon being dimmed a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, there's a person behind the curtain. There's a person behind the moon. There's a person behind the sun. That's how I'd kind of put those two together.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nicely put.
Thanks.
Yeah, I could see, events that challenge or strengthen or develop our faith, our beliefs, our outlook, our understanding. So I feel like all those planets in Pisces are like a teacher for Cancers this month. What are they teaching? They're teaching something that culminates in an event around home and family, around living environment, around parental karma, ancestral karma. So there's there's teachers and deepening of wisdom and understanding, broadening of horizons in the mind and heart, and a kind of lessons or reorienting your compass of beliefs. Very strong, maybe even looking at things like religion and faith, education, broadly speaking, and then this strong overlap with either your domestic space, where you're living, what it looks like, where it is, or relationships around home and family. And those two areas are coming together this month. Wouldn't surprise me if you're at a crossroads in terms of your outlook or view on life, and something around home and family plays a major role in continuing to shape how you think about things.
Yeah. That's often one of the biggest changes to our belief systems happen through those realizations from our ancestry.
And not to be morbid, but like if someone had this transit and grandma passes, maybe hopefully after living a long life and all those good things, but like, that'll put you in touch with mortality. That changes everything. Let's go ahead to Leo. So with Leo, we have the placement of Pisces in the 8th, and then the the lunar eclipse in Libra in the 3rd on March 25th. So, to me, I look at this as the 8th house as a transactional space. I think I recently referred to it as the blood bank. I went to the Red Cross and I found out I had O negative blood, which is apparently like universal. So I decided to donate some blood because I've heard that that's kind of a rare commodity that the Red Cross appreciates. So, okay, I'll donate some blood. So I did that, and I found out about my blood type because I did this, what do they call it? Ancestry and DNA. And I did a panel to see where I came from and
cool,
what my blood type was.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Anyway, the blood bank is an interesting concept of the 8th house, an interesting way of looking at it. We give to others so that they may live, and others give to us so that we may live. It's like in the Lion King, the circle of life. It's very 8th housey. But the dark side of the 8th house is that there's a give and take. And, there's different cultures around the earth that when they if someone gives you a gift, it's considered bad luck. And people will be very reluctant to take free things as well, right? Because even if the person seems like they're coming from a good space, like, yeah, but what will I end up owing, So there is this kind of transactional space in life. The transit, when you get a bunch of transits in the transactional space of the 8th house, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a bunch of debts or penalties or karmic obligations. There could be. But it could also mean that you have things coming to you, like from other people, energetically, emotionally, spiritually. So the give and take, the karmic exchange, the soul contract level of things, it's mysterious. We don't always know why it works the way it does. And looking at the issue or question of codependencies, and I don't mean that in just a pejorative sense. I mean, we are codependent beings, and there's problematic codependency, and there's healthy codependency in the sense that we are cooperative and dependent beings. So a lot of those dynamics are coming up for Leos this month. Just, I'm cooperative. I'm a dynamic being that shares in a reality with other people, and there's a give and take. And I carry part of people's loads, and they carry part of mine. But are all the relationships well boundaried in that realm? Maybe not. Maybe they need to change. Are all give and takes healthy and beneficial? Maybe not. Do I need to give more? Do I need to give less? So I think there's a real focus on that for Leos this month. And then at the same time, the Libra moon in the third house seems kind of unrelated on one level, but on the other level, if you think about the third house as the environment in the world around you and your care and tending of the environment, well, the care and tending of the environment looks intimately connected to all these different forms of give and take. Mm-hmm. So if you want to change what your house looks like, it's a conversation. If you live with someone else, if you want to change what day-to-day life looks like, how anything from mundane matters like bills and energy and income and expenses, anything in the everyday life is going to change. It is going to be due to some very strong shifts that are happening in the blood bank, if that makes sense.
I love that. I love that as the blood bank. That's like such a great way to just, because the eighth house, sometimes you're like going on all these like little dots with the eighth house. Like that's just a great way to summarize it. It's funny. Of course, being a Leo rising, I was listening intently to every word Adam was uttering, and really, okay, what are you going to say, man? But I think that, one thing, and this is very personal to me, I hope it translates out to those of you who are listening, but with Saturn present there now for, almost a year, there's been a sense of like, where are the exchanges fair? Where are they not? And what I've been discovering too is it's not just about how much did I give? I didn't give enough. A lot of it's about the reception. Like when you don't allow somebody to give to you, you really, in a lot of ways, unintentionally make them feel like they're not needed or valued in your life. When you don't allow someone to bring things to you, it's like it's saying like, well, yeah, I don't need anything from anybody. And sometimes Libras can feel like that, with the Libra moon, I can just say, in the Libra eclipse, it's like, yeah, well, I don't want to ever feel out of balance with anybody. It's a little bit of what I was talking about with Aries in the Libra 7th house. But I'm wondering, with this here too, you do want to look at, are those exchanges that you're having with other people that you're allowing to give to you, like, I've said this before on this podcast, and it's the best advice my Sicilian grandmother ever gave me. Never say thank you to an enemy, because you accept, even when they do something nice to you, because you accept their energy that they're giving to you. And there's something, I always love this old sort of folk magic from
I love it.
Italy. And that could be something here too, where it's like, who am I accepting this from? And then what will be the expectation? Just as Adam was saying, the expectation because of that. And just being being kind of savvy about those dynamics this month, I think could serve us well.
Yeah. There's a way in which our beliefs also shift and change, and our values and outlook on life, because we are allowing other people to give something to us.
Yeah.
Right. And that could be the open-mindedness of the Libra third house, kind of pinging off from the Aries 9th house. Right. So because that eclipse is coming up in the 9th too. And all the planets in Aries or Pisces will be going right into Aries. And so it's as though other people we want to allow them to be we want to be a sign of a healthy relationship is that you can influence me and I can influence you.
I love that. And especially important for Leo, because Leo can be a very solitary sign. Right. I am sitting on the throne by myself. It's my duty to carry. It's like, well, other people can support you in that regard too.
Right. Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Virgo rising places the Pisces stellium in the 7th with the Libra moon in the 2nd. And I think we actually get some overlapping themes that are similar to what we were just talking about with Leo rising, insofar as we're talking about intimate relationships and we're talking about possessions and resources, again, with the 2nd and 7th rather than the 8th being emphasized with the 3rd. So I look at this and I say, there's a good chance for overlap between relationships and resources. But I realized that I just hijacked yours. You were supposed to start this one.
Go. It's all right. I'll do the next one. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll just switch up. Sorry. So, I would look at this and I would say, okay, Libra, you've got, the Libra eclipse in the 2nd house. There is it's a South Node lunar eclipse. There's expiration in the air, finality, resolution, completion, a cycle of karma that's completing itself with respect to who and what you rely on for what. That is a broader meaning of resources in the second house. It's not just money, it's who and what do I have that I can rely on. And there's something there that's ending, something that's releasing. And then we have the emphasis on deep transformation in intimate relationships. So I would think there's a connection between resources, who and what you can rely on as support, what you have or are in possession of or are cultivating, and the ongoing transformations in love and relationships, not all of which will be easy with Saturn there. There's maybe having to balance the books when it comes to relationships and how they figure into your needs, your wants, your values, your assets, things like that. So, and the other thing would be just inventory socially, like who and what relationships are most valuable to you and are worth cultivating and developing as assets in your life.
Oh, I love that. I think, I think of just looking at Virgo, the sign, and this happening for Virgos between the 7th and the 2nd, real issues around value and worth really come to the surface for me. Like, especially with Pisces in the 7th house, is like, where have you maybe externalized your sense of worth too much to others, or where are you maybe holding it too much within yourself, saying only I define it, only I, and we're like, you're not open to the reception or feedback from others that could actually enhance that feeling of value and worth. And I really feel like, if you're putting these two houses together, which we don't necessarily have to, but there is a sense where there's a dematerialization with the South Node in the 2nd house with the moon of the feeling that with Virgo and Libra, often that I have to have everything under control in order to feel like I have value. I have to have everything set. I have to have everything held in order to create a sense of value or worth. And there's a sense with Pisces here, which I actually think could be a great ally this month. And it's okay to let go and go with the flow. It's okay to trust in, like, you have value and worth because you are a sovereign divine being with a divine soul, just like everybody else is. And you don't have to work so hard to tightly grip what people feel or think about your value and worth, because it's just a reality. And I think Pisces actually can do very well with that, especially with Neptune right at the end of the sign right now. Yeah.
Let's go forward to Libra rising, which places this lunar eclipse in your 1st house if you're a Libra, and the Pisces stellium into the 6th. Now, Alex, I'm not gonna bogart this one as well, so you go ahead.
You're not gonna eclipse it. I'm right for the age for dad jokes now. I'm just leaning into it.
You got it, man.
So let's see. I do feel like with Pisces in the 6th house, with Mars present in its joy, Neptune, there is something about a sacrifice here, I think. That doesn't mean that it's all loss. I think sometimes, like I was saying in the beginning, we can think of just like all change is loss, or all change is grief, or all change is this big, scary thing. But I think there is something here where there's an offering to be made. There's a humility to be found in, like, in order to move forward on this grand quest of the 6th house, which often feels kind of like a grand quest, there's something that has to be thrown on the fire. There's something that has to be harvested in a particular way that's respectful and reverent, in order that our cycle really can come to a close. And that, with the eclipse moon in the first house, I think that would relate really powerful to the identity, how, to really looking at what aspects of your identity have just hit the limit. They can't go any further. And if you try to take them further, with the 1st house and the 6th house involved, you may, it's possible that your body starts to get your attention in some ways. That's not to scare anybody. It may or may not happen. I'm just saying these houses may be relevant to that idea of, like, your energy really starts to go down. You really starts to notice it in a physical way. But I think it's okay for this month to really feel like this part of who I am, who I've thought myself to be, it's okay to let it go. And that opens a whole new set of possibilities down the road of what can come for you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I look at this and I think, okay, like, I know it might seem you might scratch your head at how I'm making this connection, but I could also see family karma coming up in a big way. And the reason for that is that when you have a lunar eclipse in the first house with the South Node, any ways in which your family of origin has shaped or continues to shape your sense of health, well-being, identity, psychology, you will see that lunar eclipses in the first house are strongly coincide with the shaping of our lives and our health and our identity from family. And that's because of the lunar nature of the eclipse in the house of identity. When we pair that along with the sixth house transits, for example, I guarantee you at least one person in this audience will have the theme of caring for a sick family member. And that doesn't mean they're going to die. It doesn't mean anything terrible. It just like care for, sacrifice on behalf of, compassion on behalf of someone who is sick. That could also mean that you have nothing to do with them because they're alcoholic sick and you had to draw a boundary, but you have to have compassion for the whole situation and find some level of forgiveness through your AA, your Al-Anon program or something. The point is just that I could see grief, frustration, suffering, service, sacrifice playing into something that is really affecting you emotionally that comes from your family history. That's a little different, but the other one that I would say would be about shifts in identity, health, or wellness that require some sacrifice or that require a letting go. It's like, gracefully aging or making shifts to your plans, priorities, or expectations because you're realizing you have certain limits, or you're realizing that you can't keep going forward in the same old way and you got to shift something so that you care for yourself better. So these are a few things that come to my mind anyway.
One of the things quickly on what you were saying, Adam, is one of the aspects of the 12-step programs that has been very helpful for me from Al-Anon has been you didn't create it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it.
Yes.
There's something to me about that type of feeling with the Pisces sixth house there, right? It's just like there's certain things I don't have the control over, and maybe an identity got shaped around the belief that you did.
Yeah.
And that could be a letting go that's happening from that too.
Yes, that's a great point. Yeah. That's a great point. We take things on, they aren't necessarily our own.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, for Scorpio, we'll flip flop now. So I've got Scorpio with the lunar eclipse in the 12th and Pisces energy in the 5th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, okay.
I remember we're going back and forth. I'll go for this one if you want.
Okay, you go for it.
So I think there might be something with this Pisces 5th house. This is really interesting because I could see some really exciting, interesting, creative endeavors on the horizon that may at first feel like they get a little bit of rain poured on their parade. Like with Venus passing Saturn, it's like, I am so jazzed about this new art project or this new relationship, or I really like this beautiful idea for a book I'm creating. And I think it's going to be so helpful to all, you get really into the Pisces, ether with it. And Saturn says like, well, that's not practical. Are you really, do you really want to do that book? Are you going to make money from that book? There might be that feeling. And so I think that there is that balance coming in this month. And I'm wondering with the moon, the South Node in the 12th house, in Libra, I think that that's a really interesting way of looking at finally seeing, and Scorpios are really well equipped to do this, finally seeing a thing. I don't think we ever see all of our stuff particularly, and we need other people to reflect it, but the ability to look at where you may have felt restrained by a sense of duty or a sense of diplomacy that may sometimes feel like it sort of controls you from behind the scenes. Like I need to kind of dot all these I's and cross all these T's and make sure there's a sort of balance here where it's like that may be inhibiting you in some way or holding you back in a way where if you let it go and see it and transform it, there's some power, and I see some gifts under the surface of that in the 12th house, especially with an exalted Venus ruling that house. There's every time we retrieve a lost part of ourselves, it's not just about healing that part, but it's also recovering the gifts that it was trying to give and it couldn't for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's something along that,
Yeah, very well said. I like that. Yeah, I think you know, the Libra 12th house, if you think about 12th houses as something that is actually a part of the mythology and character of the first house, the rising sign, but it's a hidden part, you know, it becomes really interesting. All 12 rising signs have an interesting 12th house story that's actually maybe a part of who they are, or a part of what they're trying to be or understand, or that something that's a part of them that they can't see. And for Scorpios, you know, the one thing, you know, Scorpios don't usually get accused of is being perfectionists. But where does that deep, penetrating need for truth come from? For connection and fusion emotionally, for zero tolerance for BS, for the control and the power associated with Scorpio. It comes from a sort of subconscious or unconscious Libran space of having immaculate, pristine ideals. We think of Scorpio as kind of tumultuous emotionally, but it's imagine like a madman being fueled by you know, kind of Platonic ideals that are not totally visible to them.
And they're totally capable of contrasting it. They see when it's not meeting that very clearly.
Exactly. And it can really torture them emotionally, or they can torture others emotionally, but from the falling short and so forth. There's an interesting sign, like a story like that for all 12 signs. But the Libra eclipse, to me, along with the Pisces 5th house energy, says, yes, there's this creative, romantic churning in the 5th house. What's the point if it's not perfect? What's the point if it can't be perfect? I could see Scorpios struggling with a kind of skepticism, or a tendency to doubt or question or scrutinize what is coming through as a series of creative longings, because if it's not perfect, it can't be anything. I could see there being also devastating disappointments within romantic longings or yearnings. Oh, I want this, I desire that, this is creatively rewarding or satisfying for me. But, you know, you get that pinch from the 12th house saying, well, there's some way in which it falls short. There's something, you know, lunar eclipse in Libra can be about the disappointment of things failing, you know, things not adding up somehow, which is a Libran shadow. Especially, so you think of Libran shadows when you think of the 12th house.
Yeah, I love that. Love that.
Okay, let's go on. I think, you know, more redeeming for Libras, I would say there's great creative energy, and there's maybe a looking at unconscious material that you, if you address, can help you to be more creatively satisfied. But okay, now I'm going to hand off to you, and we have the Pisces Libra connection between 4 and 11.
Interesting. So, you know, I could see with Pisces in the 4th house and an exalted Venus present, there's something to me about, there are many beautiful things that we inherit from our families. There are many beautiful gifts, many beautiful creative abilities that we inherit from our families. And some of those serve us well in our own individualized sense of self, and some of them don't. Some of them are just like, you know, we've inherited them, they're beautiful, they're wonderful, but, you know, just because I'm good at it doesn't mean it's necessarily part of my dharma type of feeling. And I get that feeling with the 4th house here, especially with, you know, the exalted Venus really calling towards a sense of what are the creative, beautiful aspects that I've inherited from my ancestry, from my lineages, but what also speaks to me, you know, Saturn in Pisces here really speaks to an amount of integrity to me. Like, what's an integrity with my own sense of self? And that's a really interesting and fascinating discernment to go through. And I think, you know, you put the lunar eclipse now in Libra in the 11th house, you're looking at the exchanges you have within your social networks, professional networks, but I think you're also looking at like the ways which you either prop up your career or the way you prop up the way you're seen in the world. So who is present in the 11th house? You know, who are the people who are helping you stay balanced? Who are the people who are maybe requiring too much of an effort for balance? And who maybe there's something that's dissolving around a feeling of, I have to, you know, kind of tap dance around all these groups to make sure everybody is happy in some way. and solidify both feet on the ground and understand who is really the benefactor and who is, who is maybe demanding time, attention, or resources in a way that may not ultimately be beneficial anymore.
I like the connection between these two houses in terms of changes in location and community. So you could literally be relocating and finding that you need to meet new people or establish new community. I could also see this as like a connection between family systems and group or community systems, living environments, community environments, and social or professional environments. Some overlap between the way you were raised and what family or belonging or safety and security looked like, and how that is mirrored in ways that are sufficient or insufficient socially. Maybe some connections between home, family, communities, groups of people, stuff like that.
Could be a nice new beginning with some, letting go happening around home.
Yeah.
With that Saturn.
Capricorn, is this me or you? I forget.
I'm all
messed up. Okay. 3rd house Pisces, 10th house Libra eclipse on March 25th. Let me go back one day. There we go. So, first of all, the emphasis on the eclipse for Capricorns, you've got the eclipse in your 10th house. So, an expiration date that is being reached with respect to your career, your vocation, or whatever engages you with the world outside of your home. What brings you out into the world and what activities define your intersection with the world. And that's, in the case, some people might be retired or not even into their career yet. But there is a cycle of engagement with the world, probably professionally for most people listening to this, that is ready to expire. That's the South Node lunar eclipse. The fruit is ripe on the tree. It's ready to be plucked. The cycle has reached completion. There might be a sense of satisfaction or fulfillment or culmination or completion, but also closure and letting go. And that's in the career house for Caps. While at the same time, we have an emphasis on 3rd house planets. And the 3rd house can be the mind, the emotions, the everyday environment. There's a lot of change happening in that house, including a new moon cycle. The cycle starts off with a new moon in Pisces early in the month. So, when I think of this with this combination, Pisces is a sign of transition from the late winter into the spring zodiacally. And so that transition is about emerging from darkness into light. And it's a water sign, which means it's I want to say earthy, even though it's water, but it's very embodied. It's very physical and material, and emotional. It's rooted in senses and feelings, perceptions, relationships with living beings, that matrix of being. But it's also transitioning from a dark space into a light space, which means that there's something we're seeking in Pisces. There's always a kind of restlessness. So there's a lot of really restless energy coming through mentally, emotionally, and in the environment as some new ideal is seeking to express itself. I suspect that will shift something around career. And I suspect that carrying into April, it will shift something with respect to home and living environment, because the April 8th eclipse will be in that 4th house. So you'll start noticing it because of a kind of restless moving of parts and feelings and moods and thoughts in the environment.
I'm reflecting on that eclipse in the 10th house, the lunar eclipse. And a number of years ago, I think it was in 2018, I had taught in my yoga career hot yoga almost exclusively since 2005. And around 2018, I just said, this has hit its expiration date. I can't be in a hot room for this amount of time and sweat this much. And it wasn't the type of yoga I wanted to teach anymore. And I knew if I kept going with it, it was going to start getting bad. Like, it was going to start, this is going to start going from like, I'm in a really good place to like, well, I'm kind of phoning it in. Well, I'm really not really interested in doing this. And that starts to bleed into the relationship. So we're thinking of this eclipse as like knowing when something has expired and it's okay to move on, knowing when an idea in your career or a job or a way you think about work in some way maybe has reached its pinnacle. And it's like, on a high note, I want to move on to something different. Or on a high note, I feel something has come to completion and I'm going to try to move on to something in a new way. And I see I love your description of the third house Pisces, Adam, because I think that Pisces, we often talk about in my readings when I'm working with Pisces. Pisces is just under the surface of the water, looking up at the sun and also looking down at the depth of the ocean at the same time. They're kind of caught between those two, forces that are pulling them. And I'm wondering if there's a call here for a greater evenness of mind, that you neither have to be pulled too far in the direction in one direction in your mind or too far in the other, too far to the future or too far to the past, that there's maybe with some amount of realizing you've hit a wall in some way, or maybe with some amount of feeling like there's a limit that you're coming up against with Saturn there's a feeling of just being able to coast under the surface of the water. You surface when you need to, and you dive when you need to. It's like, the whales we have up here on the East Coast. You see that very clearly with that. There's just a sense of balance of knowing I don't have to go too far to one extreme in my mind or within Pisces, particularly my emotional, energetic field as well.
Yeah, very nicely put. Let's move on to Aquarius. And we've got Pisces in the 2nd with Libra in the 9th.
Interesting. I wonder if this eclipse for Aquarius risings might present an interesting challenge to, the Aquarian, and Adam and I have talked a lot about this. Adam, you've talked a lot about it on your channel about Pluto moving into Aquarius, the Aquarian ideal, the galaxy brain that sees all the interconnections of all the stars, the Milky Way from high above. And I'm wondering if there's something about this Libra eclipse that is asking an Aquarius to sort of look at, is that ideal contributing to a belief system that has served me? Or is it contributing to a way that is also a way of seeing the world that also has some aesthetic beauty to it, has some sense of harmony to it? Because sometimes I think there can be this sense of this is just such a good idea and it needs to be done. This is the idea. It's going to save us all, that sort of feeling. And looking at Libra in the 9th house, I'm wondering if there's a culmination of feeling like that can get you to a certain point. But is this an ideal that has some diplomacy behind it? Does it have a give and take behind it? Does it have a sense of, yes, this might be wonderful, but what could somebody else contribute to it? And I think that could be a really interesting tension this month with the eclipse in the 9th house in Libra. And then you have this beautiful Pisces energy in your 2nd house. I would be interested to see if there's a place within you that feels under the surface of the sort of headspace that Aquarius can occupy so easily. There's a little bit more this month of trusting in your intuition about what's valuable and what's not. I mean, coming down into one of the Pisces' great strengths is they can feel so much, and that can overwhelm them, but it also is a wonderful strength. And feeling for, what does prop up my sense of self? What is my sense of worth and value? And have I maybe put too much of my, too many eggs in one basket, and how I believe that can come about? And is it time for a reassessment of, just on an energetic level, how I could sort of feel more centered in my worthiness in who I am?
Right. Yeah, I think that there's another theme that comes to my mind is when someone or something that you rely on is no longer there. How does that have an impact on the way you see the world and what you believe or know to be true? For example, let's just say this would be tragic, but let's just say you lose someone that you have lost, that you have relied on for a sense of safety or well-being or financial support, and you lose them only to discover that you are more capable than you thought you were. It's a radical shift in your outlook and understanding of life. I could see some kind of reshuffling around what we have, what we're in possession of, our resources, which can be people, they can be qualities or skills, they can be money in your bank account. What do I have? What is a resource of mine that's very near or dear to me? How are there shifts or changes happening with respect to those resources, and how are they connected with the process of learning, with the process of understanding? shifting of my beliefs or perceptions of the world. It could also be about a reallocation of resources because you want to go back to school or you want to spend more time with a spiritual practice or something. So I could see a connection between our resources and assets and learning, education, or beliefs in faith.
I love that. It's beautifully put.
Yeah. Let's go to Pisces, our last sign.
Oh, Pisces.
And we've got this huge lineup in your first house with lunar eclipse in the blood bank. So,
well, you could take that one, Adam.
In case you missed it. So I found out I had O negative blood a while back through this testing kit that I did. And I thought it was really interesting. I found out, by the way, that not only am I Dutch, but apparently I have a really significant amount of Scottish in me. And I was like, wow, I was not expecting that. Anyway, so I found out I was O negative, gave some blood at the blood bank here in Minneapolis, like a Red Cross thing. I think this was last summer at this point. Anyway, and I was sitting there and I go, this is such an 8th house place. Like they literally were like, your blood most likely will go to, I don't remember what it was. Accident victim. I mean, it was like something specific that they told me that it would go to. And I think it was people who had been in accidents or something. And I was like, wow, this is weird. Like my blood will be someone else's blood. And I started thinking about how that's really what the 8th house is like. What's mine will become yours. And what is yours will become mine. And there are ways in which that is as freaky as a horror movie. And there are ways in which that is, as cheesy as a Hallmark movie. And it just really, every situation is very different with the 8th house. Yeah. It was called the knowledge, the pharmacon, the knowledge of poisons and medicines, things that take life and things that restore life. So it's a tricky house. And I think that with a lunar eclipse in that house, with so many planets moving through your first, you're at a crossroads, let's say, and you're asking yourself, what's most important to me? But that is a question that has to do with who and what you are in a reciprocal relationship with, and what ties or contracts or bonds you need to keep alive and well and healthy and cared for, and which you have to get rid of because they're draining you. I see this as a question of identity and health, and a nice tie-in to those give and take blood bank relationships that are either life-giving and affirming and supporting, or denying or draining somehow. And there's a real evaluation of that in relation to your own health and well-being this month.
For sure. It's funny. I was just thinking, I did one of those tests a while ago, and there were no surprises. I am born in Boston. I am Irish and Italian. That was just, it is right there, exactly as I was told. It just came out right on paper. I'm like, well, that was helpful. It's like, I'm Irish and Italian. All right. Yeah, I think too, I actually see, while Saturn and Mars, traditionally can be seen as difficult, as the malefics, I actually feel like for Pisces this month, they could be allies if you see them in the right way, which is, it can often be hard for strong Pisces in the chart to really define boundaries of sense of self, where I end and where somebody else begins. And you've got 2 planets that are very good at defining in your first house right now. And I'm wondering if, along the lines of what Adam was saying with this exchange eclipse happening in your 8th house, if there's a way of saying, like, in order to maintain a sense of who I am, certain things I have to say no to. Certain energy I have to say no to. Certain energies I just have to, in a sense, when we do this in energy work all the time, we have to cut the cord in a way. And that doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Sometimes it's just to something that happened in the past or something that has been weighing you down that causes you to feel like you can't quite get a sense of where you are or locate yourself. And I think that Saturn and Mars, while it can be challenging sometimes for sure, could be great allies in the sense of like negation, bringing across the sense of feeling more centered in who I am. And it might come across in the sense of exchange with the lunar eclipse in Libra in the 8th house as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that there's an Aries eclipse coming up in the second for Pisces as well, which suggests that the establishment of new resources and greater emphasis on self-reliance. That's another interesting thing to pair along with it. Well, Alex, great delineations. Thanks so much for being here today. I want to tell people more about how they can get in touch with you. So it is alexamorosi.com, where you can book a reading with Alex or a healing session with him. Join his newsletter, where you can get his nice write-ups on the moon cycles and transits of the month. You can find him on Instagram at Alex Amorosi Healing, where he does a lot of really fun and creative sharing. I highly recommend booking a reading with Alex. For sure, he is one of the people that I refer to if and when I'm not taking clients. So really recommend you guys check Alex's work out more. Alex, as always, thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to look forward to our meeting next month, because next month we have a shit ton of energy in Aries, a major, maybe probably the biggest eclipse of the year, and Jupiter Uranus getting together. So
I think we should schedule like 5-6 hours for April.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big one.
Yeah, it
really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the biggest month of the astrological year as far as I can tell. I'm always surprised every year. Sometimes another month or two jump out at me, but like you can usually circle on your calendars which which months of transits are going to be the biggest. April's been on mine for over a year, so
yeah, for me too.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you guys so much. And remember, like I said, at the end of today's content, you can stick around if you want to learn more about Ashley's Herbal Apprenticeship Program, which is coming up at the end of April. Registration is open. If you want to learn more about Ashley's work, the program, what it entails, her background, stick around after we sign off here, and you can hear Ashley and I talk about that. All right, that is it for today. Alex, thank you so much for being here again.
Bye-bye, Adam. Great to see great to see you and see it in April.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for sticking around. I'm really happy to be joined by my wife, Ashley, who is an herbalist. Hi, Ashley.
Hey.
And yeah, I'm really excited to be helping Ashley promote her upcoming program, which is something that you actually began teaching many years ago, this Herbal Apprenticeship Program. I think it was, 2011 or 12 that it got started, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's been over 10 years I've been offering this course, and yeah, it's my favorite thing to teach.
Yeah. And just to be clear, because some people on my channel, most people know you because you pop on here or there. We talk about herbs and astrology. There's an attraction in our marriage and an attraction in the subject matter that is old. Like we've been together for, 14 years in our relationship going on. And we've always had a fascination with each other's areas of expertise, and we've done lots of things to marry them together over the years, in addition to literally getting married. And and actually, herbalists and astrologers have married the subjects of herbs and planets together for thousands of years as well. Now, your program is focused on, herbalism. It's not an astrology course, but there is certainly a lot of overlap in terms of the energetics and the spiritual approach to herbalism that you take. And so I was hoping that we could start off just by telling people a little bit about the program. You're coming to this after taking a little bit of time on maternity leave. Our kids were not yet in school. Now they are. You're coming back to work. This is really exciting. The new program launches at the end of April. I'm going to put it up on the screen so people can see it. You can find it at skyhouseherbs.com. Enrollment is open now. The course begins. You go under Courses, Herbal Foundations Apprenticeship at the end of April. Tell us about it.
Well, this course, I guess my goal in redesigning the apprenticeship course that I've been teaching for 10 years is to make it even more personal and to allow people to study the material, digest it at their own pace. So what it's going to be is a combination of kind of three main parts. The first one is the recorded material. So there's going to be modules that will be released, and people can listen to them as they have time. The second part are live classes, where we will meet live on Zoom and talk about the module, I'll answer questions, I'll give even more information about it. And then the third part is the sacred plant pairings. And so I've always taught the herbal portion, like the plant diets, one at a time, but this year I'm going to do it in pairs, because I think you can learn a lot by comparing and contrasting herbs. So for every module, you'll have 2 herbs to study, and you'll get a little cheat sheet about them before you start the module. And then you'll have an opportunity to work with those 2 plants and blend them and keep them separate and just really work with them closely. Because my goal is that I want people to be able to find information that they can really use in their own lives, maybe with clients, whether they have a professional herbal practice or maybe they're a therapist in a different field, that they'll know these plants so that they can work with them really comfortably.
I love the different modules that you have just so we can preview them for people. Module 1 is Vitalism and the Heart of Herbalism. Module 2, Building Your Home Apothecary. They're so diverse. I love Module 3 is my favorite, Plant Spirit Medicine. Energetics and chemistry. You have such a holistic approach. It's what I've always loved about your teaching. You'll teach about the doctrine of signatures. You'll talk to people about how to communicate with plants, how to think of them as teachers that are living beings, that have personalities, that aren't just, phytochemistry or whatever. But you will also teach phytochemistry. And I think that you have this really well-rounded way of helping people be intelligent about the plants, about the body, about the systems of the body, but also not afraid to use energetic systems, not afraid to take something from the kinds of energetics that ancient mystics were working with, whether that's the elements or whether that's, some of the overlay with things like Ayurveda, Chinese medicine. You take what's useful on a symbolic and energetic plane and on a personal connection level with the plants, and you marry it to really smart scientific research. I think that's rare. You don't see that a lot.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, to me, it's all language. They're just different languages that we talk about the same thing. And I think the more diverse our languages as herbalists, the more we can reach more people. And that's kind of my goal. Like, I want everyone to be able to identify plants, use plants. So we need to diversify the languages we speak so we can talk with our physicians, so we can talk with a therapist, we can talk with a mystic, right? We can talk with children, and we have a language that everyone can use.
You talk in the program, in your modules, you have stuff on digestive and gut health. You have stuff on detoxification, colds and flus, and dealing with virus seasons. You talk about tissue states, and you're talking about how to give things to your kids for, helping them maybe at times even relax before bed at night. We use a lot of different things with our kids. I love this, that you have called this I'm going to find the phrase where you use, and I'm going to mess it up. A community herbalist. What is a community herbalist, so that people can understand that definition? Because sometimes people might look at a course like this and think, gosh, unless I go to an accredited university for 8 years and learn all about chemistry, I have no right or business suggesting herbs to people or using herbs. That's just not true. And that's not the history of how folk herbal medicine has been used or taught. So what do you mean when you say community herbalist?
I think you said it perfectly. This is the people's medicine, and our grandmothers and great grandparents used plants as medicine. There's nothing actually that hard about the practice of herbal medicine. It's just getting to know the plants and getting to know the times when they're most useful. I really envision that this course, people can take it and yes, use it for themselves, number one, because I think a lot changes when we have the personal experience, and then using it in your family, whether that's just, maybe making a tea for your dog, or, if you have kids, or maybe you just have a partner, maybe you have plants you can use, and we'll talk about taking care of a garden, but using it for yourself, for whoever's immediately around you, and then taking it beyond that, because it's likely that at some point you're going to be talking with someone. They're going to say, oh, I've got this digestion thing and I've tried this and this. And they might say, hey, you're studying herbs. Is there anything that you would recommend? And you know what? You'll probably have a few ideas. And that, you never know how one way that you help someone out there in the world might trickle and then help others and more people. So I think through the self-knowledge and studying this knowledge in your own body, it'll naturally, it's like, impossible for it not to spread out and start to affect the broader community.
Yeah, I think that's really important. This is also for that reason, because we have a vision. I mean, you guys know through my Kickstarter, you guys helped us build a community herbal medicine garden that Ashley's been hosting free and donation-based events out of, that the donations go right back into the garden and just growing the medicine that we then find ways of harvesting and giving to other people, or letting other people come and harvest. We have a vision, and we always have, back to the days when we had our yoga studio in Maryland. We have always had a vision of making this sacred knowledge accessible to people. And that is both there in this program in terms of the way you're framing what it means to be an herbalist. It might mean that you're a professional and you see clients, and you could continue beyond this program developing the skills to do that. This would certainly set you up for success. You could also go forward and be someone who uses what you know with friends and family and yourself. And that's an incredible set of tools to have. The program's also very accessible from both a programming standpoint and a price standpoint. I'm going to take you back over and show everybody the programs. The modules are pre-recorded, but then you meet outside of the modules for discussion, community, Q&A, and sort of development and integration. So people can attend those live. If they miss those integration sessions, they can also watch the replays of those. So
absolutely, yeah.
Anyone could take this at their own rate, as slowly or as quickly as you wanted to, really soak it in, or blaze through it. And, and then we can certainly, beyond this program, as Ashley perhaps makes more advanced programs available as she's easing back in out of maternity leave, can help you with further development or recommend you to many other wonderful programs where you could continue your studies. We want this to be accessible. We want community herbalism to be, as simple as being able to show a friend a couple of yoga stretches. We should be able to show each other herbs, and just, hey, this is a helpful herb to use. Also, accessibility price-wise, we have an early bird enrollment, and we have standard enrollment. And then we have tuition level 1 assistance and tuition assistance level 2, which break out the affordable tuition into different levels of affordability. And you can kind of identify where you're at if you're someone who wants to take this program, but needs to work within your means and not hurt yourself doing it. And then for those who can pay, we ask that you use standard or early bird enrollment. And that's the same thing I do for all my astrology programs. So we try to keep it super, super accessible. The Herbal Apprenticeship program starts April 24th. I know Ashley's super excited to be getting back into teaching too. I also would like to offer Ashley just a chance to tell everyone a little bit about, before we end here this interview, tell everyone maybe a little bit about your own background, who you studied with, what your influences are, and just anything else you want to say before we cap it off.
Ooh, okay. Well, I think, I started off as a kid playing in the woods, mixing perfumes and potions. And then I went on to study environmental science, where I studied organic chemistry and restoring native wetlands. And really from an environmental perspective, that's how I got into herbalism. And then after, I realized after working on the restoration piece and joining a lot of earth advocacy groups, that the problem's not with the earth, but with the people not understanding the value of the earth. So then I started going into holistic medicine. I graduated from University of North Carolina, Asheville, with a degree in interdisciplinary studies. And I went on to get my that was my undergrad. And then I got my master's from the Maryland University of Integrative Health. It was then called Thai Sophia. But my teachers there, I had such a great blend of teachers, really scientific minds, like Simon Mills from the UK and Kevin Spellman, who is like a chemistry genius. He's also an Ayurvedic practitioner, studied with Dr. Vasant Lad. Matthew Prisco, medicine maker from Galen's Way out in California. So I had a really wonderful, diverse variety of teachers in that 3-year full-time master's level program. And then after that, I went on to study with Matthew Wood pretty intensively because I liked his energetics. I liked the way he spoke about the plants and his personal experience working with low dose, drop dose medicine. And he has had amazing, he's done such amazing work herbally with just using that method. And gosh, I've got a lot of herbalists in my
David
basket.
Duke comes to mind. And
Jim Duke.
Or Jim Duke, sorry.
Jim Duke, Margie Flint, Rosemary Gladstar is like, I've only done one herb walk with her, but it was amazing. So, I have shelves of herbal books and people who I just adore.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just feel really grateful that I've had that blend of the science and the energetic herbalism and the traditional herbalist perspective as well. And I try my best to blend them together and to give everyone a really diverse yet integrated herbal studying experience.
Yeah, absolutely. You get that. That is exactly what you'll get if you sign up for Ashley's program, which I encourage you to do. If this is the kind of thing that interests you, you won't regret it. It's a fantastic course with someone I absolutely love, obviously, but also like a really, truly fantastic human being and teacher of plant medicine. And if you want to learn more about her, see her work, get to know her a little bit, check out her YouTube channel, Skyhouse Herbs, where she publishes weekly on plant medicine, plant energetics, and also on Instagram, which is Skyhouse Herbs. So the apprenticeship program starts April 24th. I wanted to get Ashley on, brag about her program, turn you guys on to it. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I'm sure that we're going to see some people from the Nightlight astrology world getting introduced to you and all of your magic.
I would love that. Thank you.
All right. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.